The modernization of Iran in the 60s had a huge role to play in the ousting of the Shah. Let's get into it. Welcome back to How Did We Get Here? In part 2, we found out what happens when you try to have boundaries with your exploitative bullies. So this time, we're going to learn what happens when you compete with your bullies. So this is Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last king of Iran. He was exiled in 1979. So after the coup of 1953, the Shah was back in control and he was really focused on making major changes. So a decade after the coup, he introduced a referendum, which is now known as the White Revolution. That revolution and that referendum included taxation, building hospitals, roads, irrigation, water systems, development, and most importantly, equal rights to women and marital status, and supporting women to get an education. This was radical. And one of the most scandalous things he did was end the feudal system, which essentially means he took a bunch of land from the clergy, the mullahs, and brought it and gave it back to the people, redistributed. So a good thing to pay attention to is that he was making really good change, but he was making mortal enemies. He was doling out land to over 30,000 families. It's been said that he helped bring millions of people from poverty into middle class and working class. So this guy was really trying to bring stakeholder capitalism to the forefront of Iran. While he was essentially ripping apart the feudal system and taking land from the clergy and redistributing it to the working class and the public. So to compensate the clergy's loss by reclaiming their land, he was giving them a stake in state-owned companies so they would all have a piece of the upside go forward. So all of this reform is improving quality of life. We're talking about schools, we're talking about hospitals, we're talking about roads, we're talking about power lines, we're talking about a quality of life that Iranians had never seen. And on a per capita basis, the GDP of this country was going up, it was rising, and it was all fueled and funded by oil. All of this sounds like a dream, right? But this is where it all goes wrong. So before the Shah of Iran, religious schooling was driven primarily by Islamic culture. And he wanted to modernize and change that and bring in Western values and Western education. That was not making the clergy happy. So one of the big things here is the clergy was really not in support of feminist movements, feminist values, and feminist equality. And the Shah of Iran was very much someone that embraced feminist and gender equality. He was someone that loved European culture, American culture, and he very much wanted to bring that innovation to Iran because he realized that we had the money and the resources to do so. I think he realized we could be a world power. I think he realized that we could easily be, at the very least, a second world power because he knew that we had the capability to produce millions and millions and millions of barrels of oil a day. And he knew that he could have huge impact on that region and global trade because he was a huge producer. But he was too much, too fast, and he made the grave mistake that many leaders have to find out, which is he did not bring his stakeholders along for the ride. So the clergy knew that they could start to chip away at all of his failures. So the Shah of Iran was definitely not an economics buff. He kind of sucked at running the finance of the overall country. And one of the things he failed to do was manage inflation. So the whole time he's running face first into the future of westernization of Iran, the clergy is literally pulling and holding him back and wanting him to rewind all of the laws around women and marriage and the economy and, more importantly, religion. They wanted to keep the company and the country Islamic. So the Shah of Iran wanted a pretty Western-looking, very French secular government, and those clergies were not having it. In the next video, we're going to take you down the rabbit hole of Khomeini and how the '79 revolution came to be. Spoiler alert, it wasn't.